Anthony Bourdain is dead because we killed him. That's how Mike Cernovich, attorney-in-residence at Guerrilla Mindset, summed up Bourdain's suicide. He dropped that line at the end of his first paragraph like it was a mic drop moment, a truth bomb that was supposed to rattle us to our collective core. Linked. Instead of a profound dose of reality, though, it came off more like a brief departure from Cernovich's trademark alpha posturing. His standard peacocking was set aside for a moment of comical self-parody, an effeminate kumbaya moment pawned off as a solution to Bourdain's tragic ending. People are just too mean to each other, Cernovich seems to lament, talking about the brutal blood sports that play out across modern social media. He cites poor Kanye West, who sure enough got a big ration of shit for stepping off the Democrat plantation and putting on a MAGA hat. Cernovich complains at length about this particular phenomenon, how in modern times we have a tendency to persecute each other for failing to abide by our respective in-groups' groupthink, and how it all gets reduced to animus and personal invective no matter what you say or do. Oh yes, if we were all just a little nicer on social media, the world would be all unicorns and glitter shit, and Anthony Bourdain would be shooting another episode of Parts Unknown, perhaps from Gorilla Land. Cernovich goes on to bemoan the public's reaction to talking about suicide as a men's issue, because someone might say, and I'm quoting him here, "What are you, some creepy MRA who thinks men are oppressed? Gross!" Cernovich also points out that if you talk honestly about men and suicide, that you might just wind up on the SPLC's hate watch as a designated hate group. Gee, I wonder who that happened to. Well, Cernovich isn't telling. Now, all of this is pretty remarkable for the guerrilla guru, for he almost but not quite, conveyed some compassion for men. Indeed, if he'd gotten any closer to the truth, he'd have sounded like an MRA. On top of that, he expressed some regrets for his past insensitivities, and even hinted at turning over a new leaf by offering a non-apology to unnamed people who he claimed he had recently slighted in private. Noticeably absent from his mea culpas was an acknowledgement of his being mockingly dismissive of the only group out there that has been actively working to have that conversation on male suicide. From his review of the Red Pill movie, Linked, which he helped finance on free speech grounds, he has some more revealing things to say about those of us who try to push a conversation about male suicide into the cultural discourse. "I have no tolerance for male weakness," he says, "and many MRAs are men who clearly need to improve their lives by going to the gym." Yeah, there you go. Smug condescension for those who have what Cernovich lacks. Compassion for men. Don't tolerate men who are weak. Fuck the wounded, especially wounded men. There's the Mike Cernovich that waits beneath his temporary pose as a social media soy boy. Between one side of his mouth implying that suicidal men should just man up and pump iron, and the other side of his mouth saying we should all roast marshmallows together over a campfire singing "Give Peace a Chance," Cernovich proves to be a gorilla that is 2 bananas short of a bunch. Like a lot of men who manufacture a sense of pride out of mocking the weak and disaffected, Cernovich sets out to shine faux enlightenment on us all, but ultimately provides intellectually porous, frequently nonsensical commentary. Yeah, right. Mean people on Twitter killed Anthony Bourdain. That sort of intellectually diminished non sequitur is fine for modern politics, or for idiotically bloviating about how tough you are, as Cernovich is wont to do. Not so much where it concerns suicide. Anthony Bourdain's untimely end, like all such untimely ends, gives us an opportunity, at the very least, for some healthy discussion on a very important topic. And in the case of Anthony Bourdain, it starts with acknowledging a fact that is inescapable, save to those of Cernovich's ilk. Anthony Bourdain is dead because Anthony Bourdain wanted to die. You see, in my experience, there are generally, and quite loosely speaking, two kinds of suicidal people: those who want to die and those who would prefer to live, but who are in so much personal pain that they can't stand the thought of going on. This happens frequently as a result of the trauma we routinely inflict on men, and the people we have the best shot at helping are almost always in that latter group. Of course, suicide is a complicated problem, and you can't really understand it thoroughly by reducing everything down to two neat, easily defined groups. But the model is helpful just the same. If you've read even a handful of stories on the Bourdain suicide, you know that suicide and morbid depression were recurring themes in his life. Linked below, you'll find the thoughts on one person who knew him. "I guess the darkness finally overtook him," they said. That's the thing about him, and he'd have been the first to say it. His dark side was always there, but it's like the darkness was always just a few steps behind him. It was like he'd managed to outrun it, literally, with his life of far-flung adventures and everything, but it was never really gone. From another source, linked, he is also quoted as telling a friend that he had never met anyone who wanted to die more than him. One of the sad realities of this kind of suicidal person is that when they're determined, there's no way to prevent them from killing themselves. You can lock them up on mental health warrants, force them into therapy, put them on medications, reach out to them with all the caring in the world, and it won't much matter. When a man decides he wants to die, there's really no stopping him. The other kind of genuinely suicidal person is the kind who suicides to escape the damage and pain of trauma. That can be post-traumatic stress from combat, which causes a great many suicides, the trauma of family breakup and divorce, and the ruinous decisions inflicted by our family courts, the financial trauma of careers lost to economic downturns, the loss of reputation from false allegations, or even the effects of prolonged abuse. And I note, of course, that in both of these groups, men dominate conspicuously. Now, the internet being the internet, it didn't take long for all the conspiracy freaks to look past the lengthy public record of Bourdain's depression and suicidal bent to conclude that it was actually Hillary Clinton operatives who killed him. As laughable as that is, it's about as intellectually sound as Cernovich's pathetic stab at his own explanation, that being that we all killed him because bad words on social media. Now, is that my cue to shut up about it and hit the bench press? Tell you what, instead of that, I'll keep talking about suicide as a men's issue, as much of a non-gorilla panty-waist thing that is to do. At the end of the credits to the Red Pill movie, you'll see that the film was dedicated to Chris Mackney and Earl Silverman, two men who killed themselves after family court and domestic violence industry abuses, respectively. Two men who, after being crushed by corrupt systems, gave up on living. Two men who might have been helped were it not for a world crawling with assholes like Mike Cernovich. For those interested, I've linked to their stories below. The point here, the absolutely maddening point, is that Cernovich was right about one thing. We can't even have a discussion about suicide that is anything less than bullshit. He just doesn't know that he's the reason. He's the one who suggests that men who push for a discussion on male suicide are weak, pathetic losers in need of a personal trainer or maybe a swift kick in the ass. And if you're listening, Mike, fuck you for that. Seriously. Now, I've acknowledged that some men are just suicidal. Their biggest problem is that they don't want to be here. They just don't want to live. And sadly, a reality check informs us that most of these men are incredibly difficult, if not impossible, to help. Other men, though, kill themselves for reasons. And while it is not nearly as simple as pointing at family courts, at the crushing power of accusation, at parental alienation, or any other elements of the war on men, we can simply accept the fact that the lion's share of victims are men, and that something in their lived experience predisposes them to check out with extreme prejudice. God forbid we might entertain the idea that society's treatment of men, including morally bankrupt, shaming judgments on their weakness, might have something to do with it. One thing I do know, that of the men who ultimately respond to abuse with suicide, there is a prevalent feeling of no one caring about them, a certainty that they don't matter and probably never did. And damned if they aren't right. No one cares about them. Most men are too busy puffing out their chests and strutting to bother. Now, if you read through Mike Cernovich's work at any length, you will see he's a big proponent of men fighting back. It's when the going gets tough, the tough get going mentality, and I have to say in a lot of ways, I push the same message myself. Accountability, self-ownership, boundaries, values, and the willingness to live and die by them. All of these are central ideas to the men's rights movement. The call to fight back, accompanied with compassion for their struggles. That's why the men's movement should be talking about these issues and why people like Mike Cernovich would be doing suicidal men a favor by just shutting the fuck up. I get it, though. Dead men don't buy books, so they're of little use to the guerrilla guru. It will be difficult, if not impossible, to ever have a realistic, honest, and incisive public conversation about suicide. As a men's issue, it's on the no-talk list with everything else men have to deal with. But that is another thing about the MRM that I really love. We are doing a damn good job of shredding that list. And I'll tell you from the heart, that is worth living for. And that is it for this talk, gents. As always, I hope you've enjoyed, even if you haven't, and we'll see you next time.